Hi everybody, Dave Galt with Remax Team Galt, speaking to you the day before Thanksgiving 2012. Like every year I've been doing for approximately, I guess it's been 8 years or so, I've shared a tradition that has been part of my family for quite some time. And it all began by something that my mother and father and I used to do when we lived in Wisconsin. Which was many, many years ago, back in, gosh, I would have been in the probably late 70s, early 80s. We lived there for a few years, and I don't want to jump ahead, but part of the story is about an experience and a tradition that began back then. And obviously, tradition is something that's very important to many, many families at this time, of course, including myself. I'm very traditional, big fan of traditions, and just ask my wife, she loves it. Sometimes she loves it, sometimes she's rolls her eyes at me, I think, but that's alright. But I wanted to read an article to you. This is an article in response to an article I read in the Times back in 2004, and after I read it, I wrote a letter to at the time, the writer, and they actually published my letter to them. And it's something that I've had the luxury of sharing for many years. Back when I hosted Inside Northern Hamilton County on Channel 19, I would read this every November show, and the people that I would speak to always enjoyed it. And so I'm continuing the tradition of reading the tradition. So without further ado, I'm going to read this article that was in the Noblesville Times, again back in 2004. It's titled, A Thanksgiving Tradition Continues. Not sure where to begin, so I'll just start typing and hope that I make some sense. You wrote an article in the September 8th Noblesville Times that happened to affect me in a way you'd never even guess. The article was titled, of all things, Cranberry Highway. I happened to be catching up on some reading when I came across your article. The picture of the floating cranberries caught my eye. I lived in Wisconsin for a few years during my childhood and have visited the Dells. Here's how I connected with the article. I lost my mother, Diana Galt, just over a year ago. Again, she passed away in 2003. One long-standing tradition that started when we lived in Wisconsin was that we, my mother, father, and I, purchased these delicious cranberry nut pies from our local grocery store in Marshfield, Wisconsin. When we moved back to Indianapolis in 1981, my mother continued the tradition by contacting the grocery store and discovering a way to get some shipped to us every year. The reason I tell you this is that when Mom passed away, so did all knowledge of how she went about ordering these every year. Who did she call, what was the company, and so on. I was never privy to that information, and my poor father had absolutely no idea. This was something that Mom did for us, and I wanted to continue the tradition. As I read your article, I had this little bit of hope that you might reference something that might at least give me a clue as to where to begin to look. Seeing that the internet had been no help, and then there it was, the last paragraph, cranberry nut. As I read the name Mrs. Peterson, it all started to come back to me. I remember Mom telling me that the owner had passed away and that the recipe had been sold. We were still able to get them shipped even after that, just not in the same packaging that we were used to. First thing Monday morning, I jumped onto the internet and looked up the Country Cafe in Babcock, Wisconsin, and I placed the call. I asked for the manager, or owner, and was informed that she was not in. I shared a brief summary of my reason for calling, and the sweet voice on the other end said, "I remember your mother." Chills went down my spine. It may seem silly. After all, it's only a pie, right? Wrong. It was another piece of a beautiful memory of my mother, whom I miss. The voice on the other end informed me that I needed to speak to Sherry because that is who my mother had been dealing with since 1993. Sherry called me about an hour later, and first words out of her mouth were, "I'm sorry to hear about your mom." Sherry remembered the yearly orders for my mother. Long story short, I'd placed my order for this year's Thanksgiving dinner dessert and cannot wait. Little did I know that I would have the information right in front of me in my local daily newspaper nearly 1 year to the day of my mother's passing. She died on September 14, 2003, and I didn't read the article until September 12, 2004. Thank you for writing about such a wide variety of places. I might never have found this again, and now the tradition will live on. Since that, the young lady that I spoke to has also passed away. We actually struck up a friendship, and she was even to a point where she was going to share the recipe with me. I think she was just tired of shipping every year. But before she had that opportunity, she too passed away. Where the story takes kind of a fun twist and a deeper meaning to me is last year, 2 years ago, my wife Stephanie, knowing the history of this story and having experienced and tasted the pies before, also was a fan. She is kind of a cook, and she did a little research and came up with a recipe that she wanted to try. And in last year's video, I remember referencing something along the lines that, you know, I was going to humor her and go along with it and try it. And much to my amazement, not only did she capture my memory, but it was actually better than what the experience is. And so now here, my wife has done the research, and so the tradition continues, but from inside our own kitchen. And so it's Mom's still here, whether I can reach out and touch her or not. Her love for tradition and her love for her family continues through mine and my extended family as well. So enough about me and enough about tradition. Love who you're with. Enjoy traditions, and it's never too late to start one if you don't have one. And God bless. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.